Section 21 of Library of the World's Best Mystery and Detective Stories, Volume 2. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Library of the World's Best Mystery and Detective Stories, Volume 2, by Julian Hawthorne, editor. Section 21, The Lost Duchess, by Anonymous. Has the Duchess returned? No, Your Grace. Knowles came farther into the room. He had a letter on a salver. When the Duke had taken it, Knowles still lingered. The Duke glanced at him. Is an answer required? No, Your Grace. Still Knowles lingered. Something a little singular has happened. The carriage has returned without the Duchess, and the men say that they thought her Grace was in it. What do you mean? I hardly understand myself, Your Grace. Perhaps you would like to see Barnes. Barnes was the coachman. Send him up. When Knowles had gone, and he was alone, his Grace showed signs of being slightly annoyed. He looked at his watch. I told her she'd better be in by 4. She says she's not feeling well, and yet one would think that she's not aware of the fatigue entailed in having the prince come to dinner and a mob of people to follow. I particularly wished her to lie down for a couple of hours. Knowles ushered in not only Barnes, the coachman, but Moysey, the footman, too. Both these persons seemed to be ill at ease. The Duke glanced at them sharply. In his voice there was a suggestion of impatience. What is the matter? Barnes explained as best he could. If you please, Your Grace, we waited for the Duchess outside Cane and Wilson's, the drapers. The Duchess got into the carriage, and Moysey shut the door, and her Grace said, home, and yet when we got home she wasn't there. She wasn't where? Her Grace wasn't in the carriage, Your Grace. What on earth do you mean? Her Grace did get into the carriage. You shut the door, didn't you? Barnes turned to Moysey. Moysey brought his hand up to his brow in a sort of military salute. He had been a soldier in the regiment in which, once upon a time, the Duke had been a subaltern. She did. The Duchess came out of the shop. She seemed rather in a hurry, I thought. She got into the carriage, and she said, home, Moysey. I shut the door, and Barnes drove straight home. We never stopped anywhere, and we never noticed anything happen on the way. And yet, when we got home, the carriage was empty. The Duke started. Do you mean to tell me that the Duchess got out of the carriage while you were driving full pelt through the streets without saying anything to you and without you noticing it? The carriage was empty when we got home, Your Grace. Was either of the doors open? No, Your Grace. You fellows have been up to some infernal mischief, and you've made a mess of it. You never picked up the Duchess, and you're trying to palm this tale off on me to save yourselves. Barnes was moved to adjuration. I'll take my Bible oath, Your Grace, that the Duchess got into the carriage outside Cane and Wilson's. Moysey seconded his colleague. I'll swear to that, Your Grace. She got into that carriage, and I shut the door, and she said, home, Moysey. The Duke looked as if he did not know what to make of the story and its tellers. What carriage did you have? Her Grace's brougham, Your Grace. Knowles interposed. The brougham was ordered because I understood that the Duchess was not feeling very well, and there's rather a high wind, Your Grace. The Duke snapped at him. What's that to do with it? Are you suggesting that the Duchess was more likely to jump out of a brougham while it was dashing through the streets than out of any other kind of vehicle? The Duke's glance fell on the letter which Knowles had brought him when he first had entered. He had placed it on his dressing table. Now he took it up. It was addressed to His Grace the Duke of Datchet, private, very pressing. The name was written in a fine, clear, almost feminine hand. The words in the left-hand corner of the envelope were written in a different hand. They were large and bold, almost as though they had been painted with the end of a penholder instead of being written with the pen. The envelope itself was of an unusual size and bulged out as though it contained something else besides a letter. The Duke tore the envelope open. As he did so, something fell out of it onto the writing table. It looked as though it was a lock of a woman's hair. As he glanced at it, the Duke seemed to be a trifle startled. The Duke read the letter. Your Grace will be so good as to bring £500 in gold to the Piccadilly end of Burlington Arcade within an hour of the receipt of this. The Duchess of Datchet has been kidnapped. An imitation Duchess got into the carriage which was waiting outside Cane and Wilson's, and she alighted on the road. Unless Your Grace does as you were requested, the Duchess of Datchet's left-hand little finger will be cut off, and sent home in time to receive the prince to dinner. Other portions of her Grace will follow. A lock of her Grace's hair is enclosed with this as an earnest to our good intentions. Before 5:30 p.m., your Grace is requested to be at the Piccadilly end of the Burlington Arcade with £500 in gold. You will there be accosted by an individual in a white top hat and with a gardenia in his buttonhole. You will be entirely at liberty to give him into custody, or to have him followed by the police, in which case the Duchess's left arm, cut off at the shoulder, will be sent home for dinner, not to mention other extremely possible contingencies. But you are advised to give the individual in question the £500 in gold, because in that case the Duchess herself will be home in time to receive the prince to dinner, and with one of the best stories with which to entertain your distinguished guests they've ever heard. Remember, not later than 5:30, unless you wish to receive her Grace's little finger. The Duke stared at this amazing epistle when he had read it, as though he found it difficult to believe the evidence of his eyes. He was not a demonstrative person, as a rule, but this little communication astonished even him. He read it again. Then his hands dropped to his sides, and he swore. He took up the lock of hair which had fallen out of the envelope. Was it possible that it could be his wife's, the Duchess's? Was it possible that a Duchess of Datchet could be kidnapped in broad daylight in the heart of London and be sent home, as it were, in pieces? Had sacrilegious hands already been playing pranks with that great lady's hair? Certainly that hair was so like her hair that the mere resemblance made his Grace's blood run cold. He turned on Messrs. Barnes and Moysey as though he would have liked to have rend them. "You scoundrels!" He moved towards as though the intention had entered his ducal heart to knock his servants down, but if that were so he did not act quite upon his intention. Instead, he stretched out his arm, pointing at them as if he were an accusing spirit. "Will you swear that it was the Duchess who got into the carriage outside Cane and Wilson's?" Barnes began to stammer. "I'll swear, your Grace, that I thought—" The Duke stormed an interruption. "I don't ask what you thought. I ask you, will you swear that it was?" The Duke's anger was more than Barnes could face. He was silent. Moysey showed a greater courage. "I could have sworn that it was at the time, your Grace, but now it seems to me that it's a rummy go." "A rummy go!" The peculiarity of the phrase did not seem to strike the Duke just then. At least he echoed it as if it didn't. "You call it a rummy go? Do you know that I am told in this letter that the woman who entered the carriage was not the Duchess? What were you thinking about? Or what case you will be able to make out for yourselves you know better than I, but I can tell you this, that in an hour you will leave my service, and you may esteem yourselves fortunate tonight, if you are not both sleeping in jail." One might almost have suspected that the words were spoken in irony, but before they could answer another servant entered, who also brought a letter for the Duke. When his Grace's glance fell on it he uttered an exclamation. The writing on the envelope was the same writing that had been on the envelope which had contained the very singular communication, like it in all respects down to the broomstick end thickness of the private and very pressing in the corner. "Who brought this?" stormed the Duke. The servant appeared to be a little startled by the violence of his Grace's manner. "A lady, or at least, your Grace, she seemed to be a lady." "Where is she?" "She came in a hansom, your Grace. She gave me that letter and said, 'Give that to the Duke of Datchet at once, without a moment's delay.' Then she got into the hansom again and drove away." "Why didn't you stop her, your Grace?" The man seemed surprised, as though the idea of stopping chance visitors to the ducal mansion via Armis had not, until this moment, entered into his philosophy. The Duke continued to regard the man as if he could say a good deal if he chose. Then he pointed to the door. His lips said nothing, but his gesture much. The servant vanished. "Another hoax," the Duke said grimly as he tore the envelope open. This time the envelope contained a sheet of paper, and in the sheet of paper another envelope. The Duke unfolded the sheet of paper. On it some words were written. These: "The Duchess appears so particularly anxious to drop you a line that one really hasn't the heart to refuse her. Her Grace's communication, written amidst blinding tears, you will find enclosed with this." "Knowles," said the Duke, in a voice which actually trembled, "Knowles, hoax or no hoax, I will be even with the gentleman who wrote that." Handing the sheet of paper to Mr. Knowles, his Grace turned his attention to the envelope which had been enclosed. It was a small, square envelope of the finest quality, and it reeked with perfume. The Duke's countenance assumed an added frown. He had no fondness for envelopes which were scented. In the center of the envelope were the words, "To the Duke of Datchet," written in big, bold, sprawling hand which he knew so well. "Mabel's writing," he said half to himself as, with shaking fingers, he tore the envelope open. The sheet of paper which he took out was almost as stiff as cardboard. It, too, emitted what his Grace deemed the nauseous odors of the perfumer's shop. On it was written this letter: "My dear Hereward, for heaven's sake, do what these people require. I don't know what has happened or where I am, but I am nearly distracted. They have already cut off some of my hair, and they tell me that if you don't let them have £500 in gold by 5:30, they will cut off my little finger too. I would sooner die than lose my little finger, and I don't know what else besides. But the token which I send you, and which has never until now been off my breast, I conjure you to help me. Hereward, help me." When he read that letter, the Duke turned white, very white, as white as the paper on which it was written. He passed the epistle on to Knowles. "I suppose that is also a hoax?" Mr. Knowles was silent. He still yielded to his constitutional disrelish to commit himself. At last he asked, "What is it that your Grace proposes to do?" The Duke spoke with a bitterness which almost suggested a personal animosity towards the inoffensive Mr. Knowles. "I propose, with your permission, to release the Duchess from the custody of my estimable correspondent. I propose, always with your permission, to comply with his modest request, and to take him his £500 in gold." He paused, then continued in a tone which, coming from him, meant volumes. "Afterwards, I propose to cry quits with the concocter of this petty hoax, even if it costs me every penny I possess. He shall pay more for that £500 than he supposes." The Duke of Datchet, coming out of the bank, lingered for a moment on the steps. In one hand he carried a canvas bag which seemed well weighted. On his countenance there was an expression which to the casual observer might have suggested that his Grace was not completely at his ease. That casual observer happened to come strolling by. It took the form of Ivor Dacre. Mr. Dacre looked at the Duke of Datchet up and down in that languid way he has. He perceived the canvas bag. Then he remarked, possibly intending to be facetious, "Been robbing the bank? Shall I call a cart?" Nobody minds what Ivor Dacre says. Besides, he is the Duke's own cousin. Perhaps a little removed. Still, there it is. So the Duke smiled a sickly smile, as if Mr. Dacre's delicate wit had given him a passing touch of indigestion. Mr. Dacre noticed that the Duke looked sallow, so he gave his petty sense of humor another airing. "Kitchen boiler burst? When I saw the Duchess just now, I wondered if it had." His Grace distinctly started. He almost dropped the canvas bag. "You saw the Duchess just now, Ivor? When?" The Duke was evidently moved. Mr. Dacre was stirred to languid curiosity. "Can't say I clocked it. Perhaps half an hour ago, perhaps a little more." "Half an hour ago? Are you sure? Where did you see her?" Mr. Dacre wondered. The Duchess of Datchet could scarcely have been eloping in broad daylight. Moreover, she had not been married a year. Everyone knew that she and the Duke were still as fond of each other as if they were not man and wife. So although the Duke, for some cause or another, was evidently in an odd state of agitation, Mr. Dacre saw no reason why he should not make a clean breast of all he knew. "She was going like blazes in a hansom cab." "In a hansom cab? Where?" "Down Waterloo Place." "Was she alone?" Mr. Dacre reflected. He glanced at the Duke out of the corners of his eyes. His languid utterance became a positive drawl. "I rather fancy that she wasn't." "Who was with her?" "My dear fellow, if you were to offer me the bank, I couldn't tell you." "Was it a man?" Mr. Dacre's drawl became still more pronounced. "I rather fancy that it was." Mr. Dacre expected something. The Duke was so excited, but he by no means expected what actually came. "Ivor, she's been kidnapped." Mr. Dacre did what he had never been known to do before within the memory of man. He dropped his eyeglasses. "Datchet! She has! Some scoundrel has decoyed her away and trapped her. He's already sent me a lock of her hair, and he tells me that if I don't let him have 500 pounds in gold by 5:30, he'll let me have her little finger." Mr. Dacre did not know what to make of his Grace at all. He was a sober man. It couldn't be that. Mr. Dacre felt really concerned. "I'll call a cab, old man, and you better let me see you home." Mr. Dacre half raised his stick to hail a passing hansom. The Duke caught him by the arm. "You ass! What do you mean? I'm telling you the simple truth. My wife's been kidnapped." Mr. Dacre's countenance was a thing to be seen and remembered. "Oh, I hadn't heard that there was much of that sort of thing about just now. They talk of poodles being kidnapped, but as for duchesses, you'd really better let me call that cab." "Ivor, do you want me to kick you? Don't you see that to me it's a question of life or death? I've been in there to get the money." His Grace motioned towards the bank. "I'm going to take it to the scoundrel who has my darling at his mercy. Let me but have her hand in mine again, and he shall continue to pay for every sovereign with tears of blood until he dies. Look here, Datchet, I don't know if you're having a joke with me or if you're not well." The Duke stepped impatiently into the roadway. "Ivor, you're a fool. Can't you tell just from earnest, health from disease? I'm off. Are you coming with me? It would be as well as that I should have a witness." "Where are you off to?" "To the other end of the arcade." "Who is the gentleman you expect to have the pleasure of meeting there?" "How should I know?" The Duke took a letter from his pocket. It was the letter which had just arrived. "The fellow is to wear a white top hat and a gardenia in his buttonhole." "What is it that you have there?" "It's the letter which brought the news. Look for yourself and see, but for God's sake make haste." His Grace looked at his watch. "It's already 5:20. What do you mean to say that on the strength of a letter such as this you are going to hand over 500 pounds to—" The Duke cut Mr. Dacre short. "What are 500 pounds to me? Besides, you don't know it all. There's another letter, and I have heard from Mabel. But I will tell you all about it later. If you are coming, come." Folding up the letter, Mr. Dacre returned it to the Duke. "As you were saying, what are 500 pounds to you? It's as well they are not as much to you as they are to me, or I'm afraid—" "Hang it, Ivor, do prose afterwards." The Duke hurried across the road. Mr. Dacre hastened afterwards. As they entered the arcade, they passed a constable. Mr. Dacre touched his companion's arm. "Don't you think we'd better ask our friend in blue to walk behind us? His neighborhood might be handy." "Nonsense!" The Duke stopped short. "Ivor, this is my affair, not yours. If you are not content to play the part of silent witness, be so good as to leave me." "My dear Datchet, I am entirely at your service. I can be every whit as insane as you, I do assure you." Side by side they moved rapidly down the Burlington Arcade. The Duke was obviously in a state of the extremest nervous tension. Mr. Dacre was equally obviously in a state of most supreme enjoyment. People stared as they rushed past. The Duke saw nothing. Mr. Dacre saw everything and smiled. When they reached the Piccadilly end of the arcade, the Duke pulled up. He looked about him. Mr. Dacre also looked about him. "I see nothing of your white-hatted and gardenia buttonholed friend," said Ivor. The Duke referred to his watch. "It's not yet 5:30. I'm up to time." Mr. Dacre held his stick in front of him and leaned on it. He indulged himself with a beatific smile. "It strikes me, my dear Datchet, that you've been the victim of one of the finest things in hoaxes. I hope I haven't kept you waiting." The voice which interrupted Mr. Dacre came from the rear. While they were looking in front of them, someone approached them from behind, apparently coming out of the shop which was at their backs. The speaker looked a gentleman. He sounded one, too. Costume, appearance, manner were beyond reproach, even beyond the criticism of two such keen critics as were these. The glorious attire of a London dandy was surmounted with a beautiful white top hat. In his buttonhole was a magnificent gardenia. In age, the stranger was scarcely more a boy, and sunny-faced, handsome boy at that. His cheeks were hairless, his eyes were blue. His smile was not only innocent, it was bland. Never was there a more conspicuous illustration of that repose which stamps the caste of Vere de Vere. The Duke looked at him and glowered. Mr. Dacre looked at him and smiled. "Who are you?" asked the Duke. "Ah, that is the question." The newcomer's refined and musical voice breathed the very soul of affability. "I am an individual who is so unfortunate as to be in want of 500 pounds." "Are you the scoundrel who sent me that infamous letter?" The charming stranger never turned a hair. I'm the scoundrel mentioned in that infamous letter who wants to accost you at the Piccadilly end of the Burlington Arcade before 5:30, as witness my white hat and my gardenia. Where's my wife? The stranger gently swung his stick in front of him with his two hands. He regarded the Duke as a merry-hearted son might regard his father. The thing was beautiful. Her Grace will be home almost as soon as you are, when you have given me the money which I perceive you have all ready for me in that scarcely elegant-looking canvas bag. He shrugged his shoulders quite gracefully. Unfortunately, in these matters, one has no choice. One is forced to ask for gold. And suppose, instead of giving you what is in this canvas bag, I take you by the throat and choke the life right out of you. Or suppose, amended Mr. Dacre, that you do better, and commend this gentleman to the tender mercies of the first policeman we encounter. The stranger turned to Mr. Dacre. He condescended to become conscious of his presence. Is this gentleman your Grace's friend? Ah, Mr. Dacre, I perceive. I have the honor of knowing Mr. Dacre, though possibly I am unknown to him. You were, until this moment. With an airy little laugh, the stranger returned to the Duke. He brushed an invisible speck of dust off the sleeve of his coat. As has been intimated in that infamous letter, His Grace is at perfect liberty to give me into custody. Why not? Only, he said it with his boyish smile, if a particular communication is not received from me in certain quarters within a certain time, the Duchess of Datchet's beautiful white arm will be hacked off at the shoulder. You hound! The Duke would have taken the stranger by the throat and have done his best to choke the life right out of him then and there if Mr. Dacre had not intervened. Steady, old man, Mr. Dacre turned to the stranger. You appear to be a pretty sort of scoundrel. The Dacre gave his shoulders that almost imperceptible shrug. Ah, my dear Mr. Dacre, I am in want of money. I believe that you sometimes are in want of money, too. Everybody knows that nobody knows where Ivor Dacre gets his money from, so the allusion must have tickled him immensely. You're a cool hand, he said. Some men are born that way. So I should imagine. Men like you must be born, not made. Precisely, as you say. The stranger turned, with his graceful smile, to the Duke. But we are not wasting precious time. I can assure your Grace that, in this particular matter, moments are of value. Mr. Dacre interposed before the Duke could answer. If you take my strongly urged advice, Datchet, you will summon this constable who is now coming down the arcade and hand this gentleman over to his keeping. I do not think that you need to fear that the Duchess will lose her arm or even her little finger. Scoundrels of this one's kidney are most amenable to reason when they have handcuffs on their wrists. The Duke plainly hesitated. He would, and he would not. The stranger, as he eyed him, seemed much amused. My dear Duke, by all means act on Mr. Dacre's valuable suggestion. As I said before, why not? It would at least be interesting to see if the Duchess does or does not lose her arm. Almost as interesting to you as does Mr. Dacre. These blackmailing, kidnapping scoundrels do use such empty menaces. Besides, you would have the pleasure of seeing me locked up. My imprisonment for life would recompense you even for the loss of her Grace's arm. And £500 is such a sum to have to pay, merely for a wife. Why not, therefore, act on Mr. Dacre's suggestion? Here comes a constable. The constable referred to was advancing towards them. He was not a dozen yards away. Let me beckon to him. I will, with pleasure. He took out his watch, a gold chronograph repeater. There are scarcely 10 minutes left during which it will be possible for me to send the communication which I spoke of, so that it may arrive in time. As it will then be too late, and the instruments are already prepared for the little operation which her Grace is eagerly anticipating, it would perhaps be as well, after all, that you would give me unto charge. You would have saved your £500, and you would, at any rate, have something in exchange for her Grace's mutilated limb. Ah, here's the constable. Officer! The stranger spoke with such a pleasant little air of easy geniality that it was impossible to tell if he was in jest or in earnest. This fact impressed the Duke much more than if he had gone in for a liberal injustice of the, under the circumstances, orthodox melodramatic scowling. And indeed, in the face of his own common sense, it impressed Mr. Ivor Dacre, too. This well-bred, well-groomed youth was just the being to realize au beau des Anglais, a modern type of the devil, the type which depicts him as a perfect gentleman who keeps smiling all the time. The constable whom this audacious rogue had signaled approached the little group. He addressed the stranger. "Do you want me, sir?" "No, I don't want you. I think it's the Duke of Datchet." The constable, who knew the Duke very well by sight, saluted him as he turned to receive instructions. The Duke turned white, even savage. There was not a pleasant look in his eye and about his lip. He appeared to be endeavoring to put a great restraint upon himself. There was a momentary silence. Mr. Dacre made a movement as if to interpose, and the Duke caught him by the arm. He spoke. "No, constable, I do not want you. This person is mistaken." The constable looked as if he could not quite make out how such a mistake could have arisen, hesitated, then, with another salute, he moved away. The stranger was still holding his watch in his hand. "Only 8 minutes," he said. The Duke seemed to experience some difficulty in giving utterance to what he had to say. "If I give you this £500, you " As the Duke paused as if a loss for language was strong enough to convey his meaning, the stranger laughed. "Let us take the adjectives for granted. Besides, it is only boys who call each other names. Men do things. If you give me the bag with 500 sovereigns, which you have, at once, in 5 minutes it will be too late. I will promise, I will not swear. If you do not credit my single promise, you will not believe my solid affirmation. I will promise that possibly within an hour, certainly within an hour and a half, the Duchess of Datchet will return to you absolutely uninjured, except, of course, as you are already aware, with regards to the few of the hairs on her head. I will promise this on the understanding that you do not yourself attempt to see where I go, and that you allow no one else to do so." This with a glance at Ivor Dacre. "I shall know at once if I am being followed." "If you entertain such intentions, you had better, on all accounts, remain in possession of your £500. The Duke eyed him very grimly. "I entertain no such intentions until the Duchess returns." Again the stranger indulged in that musical laugh of his. "Until the Duchess returns. Of course, then the bargain's at an end. When you are once more in the enjoyment of her Grace's society, you will be at liberty to set all the dogs in Europe at my heels. I assure you I fully expect that you will do so. Why not?" The Duke raised the canvas bag. "My dear Duke, 10,000 thanks. You will see her Grace at Datchet's house, 'pon my honor, probably within the hour." "Well," commented Ivan Dacre, when the Duke had vanished, with the bag, into Piccadilly, and as the Duke and himself moved towards Burlington Gardens, "if a gentleman is to be robbed, it is as well that he should have another gentleman rob him." End of section 21.